The iHemp Hour is brought to you by Down on the Farm hemp seed oil. Better eggs, better fries through hemp. Get yours at downtothefarm.biz. My name is Dave Craybill. I'm with iHemp Michigan. iHemp Michigan's mission is to educate, inform, and promote the research, development, and cultivation of industrial hemp in Michigan. iHemp Michigan advocates for wellness in people and the planet through hemp, and it begins with the farmer. Uh, we are waiting on Blaine Bechtold's having a little bit of technical difficulties, so we're going to have our news segment a little bit later in the show. I'm excited to introduce one of our hemp friends, James Dedector from Michigan State University and MSU, and was it Wisconsin and Illinois? We've got a few collaborators in this Midwestern hemp database, and yeah, like I was sharing with James a minute ago, Blaine coined a term that we took to heart last year, and we kept repeating it, is that we're all going to be smarter next year. And I really think, there's Peter Drucker had a famous quote that whatever, and I'm going to mess it up, but basically it's whatever you can measure, you can improve upon. If you're not measuring, it's hard to improve upon because you don't know. So, this hemp database, I think, is real important to our future. We've got a little window of opportunity for everybody to jump in. They have a mobile app, some cool things. So James, why don't you talk about the database and let us know what's going on?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I'll start with a quick introduction. So, as Dave said, my name is James Dedecker. I'm the director of the MSU Upper Peninsula Research and Extension Center in Chatham, Michigan. We're located in Alger County, kind of right in the middle of the UP between Munising and Marquette. And we're in the middle of our second year of hemp field research here in the Upper Peninsula and with MSU generally in Michigan. So it's been an exciting couple of years. Even before we could grow hemp in 2019, we were keeping our eye on the industry and starting to learn, but to finally get some hands-on experience with this crop and learn right alongside all of you has been great over the last year and a half or 2 years. So as Dave mentioned, we focus on hemp research. And last year, that was grain and fiber. This year, we're working both with CBD and grain fiber hemp varieties. And we have a number of different projects. So I'll describe all of those today during our time together. But the one that we really want everybody to know about, because the timeline is tight for getting involved, is our Midwestern Hemp Database Project. So this is a collaboration of a few land-grant universities in Midwestern states. That includes University of Illinois as the lead. They also happen to be my alma mater for graduate school, so happy to be working with Bill Alberti at U of I Extension. UW Wisconsin, Madison is involved as well, as is Purdue and MSU. And these four universities have partnered up with a private lab, Rock River Labs and Pride Analytics, their cannabis subsidiary in Wisconsin, to start a public hemp database for the Midwest. So you might ask, what's the purpose of a public database? And I think it really goes back to what Dave opened with, is that this is an interesting industry and an interesting crop in that we're kind of all learning together. Because of prohibition of cannabis, people like myself at universities that pride ourselves on being, agriculture experts, have as little experience as the farmers in the Midwest do. So we're all kind of coming up together in the hemp industry and learning about this crop and learning about the value chain and marketing and all of it. And so, whereas in a normal situation with other crops, we would do research at the university, and then we try to move that data out into the community and into the industry so that farmers could use that information. We think it's important to not only draw on our primary field research for hemp data and learning, but draw on the experience of all the growers out there that are learning right alongside of us. And that's what this public database project will do. So how does it work? Well, the database is going to be a website, essentially, with a lot of data submitted by growers. And that will include cannabinoid profiling of your crop by submitting samples to Rock River Lab for analysis. and also other information that you submit to the database on the varieties that you're growing and some of your management practices like fertility, for example. What's in it for you as a grower? Well, Rock River Lab and Pride Analytics is offering discounted cannabinoid analysis for your participation as an incentive. So normally if you send a sample to Pride Analytics, you're going to pay $75 for their full cannabinoid profile on that crop. If you participate in the database, you can get that same analysis for $30. So it's more than 50% discount on that cost. Your data remains anonymous. We're not collecting identifiable information, and when it's reported out, it will be reported in an anonymized form and an aggregate. So nobody's going to know who you are or where your crop is, for example. But they will be able to begin to understand, for example, the relationship with variety and THC concentration in the crop, which we all know is so critical to regulatory compliance and being successful in this industry. They might also be able to look at the relationship between CBD concentration and soil fertility as another example of how you might use that information. So the thing about it is that the deadline for sign up is tomorrow. So we've got a really short window here. I'm super thankful that iHemp and the crew there, Dave and Blaine and everybody invited me on today so that we can get the word out about this. We've been doing articles and press releases and so forth otherwise as well. You may have heard about the database project on the radio. We had an interview with some of the ag media folks recently as well. So I wonder, Dave, do you have the actual reporting website pulled up? Well, when Dave pulls that up, you'll be able to see a lot of information already. For example, the number of growers by state that have, so if you scroll all the way down on that page, you'll see the data. Yeah, there we go. So, oh, look, we're beating Indiana as of yesterday. So on the right there, you see growers by state. A lot of growers in Wisconsin, Illinois. I'd love to see that many participants in Michigan as well. They got a little bit of a jump on promotion there, so I'm not surprised, but we need more Michigan growers represented. But now if you start going down, scroll down a little bit, Dave, you can see how some of the data will be represented. So information on previous crop, soil, planting method, irrigation, all of these things that play into yield and quality of your hemp crop. And at the top of this page is our filters. So I can filter, for example, by hemp type, grain fiber versus CBD. I can filter by row space. I can filter, most importantly, probably by variety, so that you can look at the information that way. So we're super excited about this. I should mention, it's a follow-up building upon some efforts by Wisconsin last year. There's an extension educator there, Liz Benevers, I believe is the way that you pronounce her last name, who did something similar last year in Wisconsin. A couple of differences. It was Wisconsin only, and all the data was grower submitted, including the cannabinoid data. So here, you're submitting a sample to Rock River Lab. They're generating that cannabinoid data, and you're then entering some of the management data. We have a little bit more confidence in that model with the data the cannabinoid data, I should say, coming right from the lab.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, can people pose questions in the chat or something?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so does anyone have any questions about the database before we move on to other topics for today?
Yeah, I have up here there's a simple survey that you fill out to get access to the database. You'll fill out some really basic information to get you started, and if your variety's not on this list, they'll add it to the list, so your genetic is listed in the database. Because everything is set up from what appears, James. So there's not, one of the challenges with the database is somebody types one thing one way, another thing the other way, and looks like they have this dialed in pretty well. So there's going to be good data coming through the system.
Yes.
And they have this introductory video that kind of walks through what the plans are for the database. So looks pretty good. You know, it's
Yeah,
gonna be.
Phil's doing a really good job, and I'm glad you mentioned how to get involved. So I just in the chat, I just pasted the link to the survey that Dave mentioned, and that link is how you apply to participate in the project. And the reason why we're doing that application process is what Dave just said about making sure we've got quality data. So we want to have the right people and the right information coming into the database, and we're vetting that on the front end by limiting who participates. So if you have interest in participating and getting that discount on your CBD test, then please follow that link that is put in the chat, fill out the survey, and you'll get response back from Phil at U of I about your eligibility.
Yeah, and Aaron's asking about the shipping, and there are specific sampling and shipping recommendations that you follow, and they recommend doing it early in the week. And I think, you know, and extending it express mail, because especially where's the testing lab at again, James? Do you recall?
It's in Wisconsin. Where exactly in Wisconsin, I don't recall. It's Rock
Okay,
River Laboratory. Someone was just, yeah, asking that. Rock River.
so
Yep.
not too far away. So
No. You know what they're doing in Wisconsin? That's super cool. Rock River has drop boxes all over the state, and they do a daily pickup
oh
for
really?
hemp samples. Just for, yeah, I was amazed.
So they're taking the post office right out of the equation.
Yes, yes.
Wow.
They pay drivers, and every day they go run these routes and pick up samples, and it's 24-hour pickup. I'm so impressed with that piece of it. I wish we had one of those boxes in the UP. I'd be stuffing it full every other week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Another thing that's important for people to know about this, so in Michigan, we have a certain sampling protocol, and those samples have to go to MDARD's Geegly lab for your regulatory analysis. Your participation in this project does not change that at all. So a couple of things. If you are going to participate, then you're going to be doing additional sampling. Why would I do additional sampling? Well, most CBD growers should be sampling more than once to track cannabinoid accumulation in their crop to gauge harvest timing, because you want to try to maximize CBD without going over the threshold for THC. Mm-hmm. These samples that you send to Rock River for the database can be those samples that you would take to time harvest, but you still need a regulatory sample. Also, in Michigan, our sampling protocol from MDARD is slightly different than the sampling protocol for the database project. So realize that if you are participating in the project as a Michigan grower, your sampling protocol for the samples you submit to the database is just a little bit different. The number of plants and the number of tips or buds that you take from those plants is slightly different. And that is all described in the documentation you'll receive if you are apply and are deemed eligible to participate. But I had to go through that yesterday. I took some of our first samples from some auto-flowering CBD varieties, and I had to kind of relearn what I was doing because it is a little bit different.
Yeah, I haven't gotten into the app yet, but they have a mobile app that, well, it's not working on my screen. Yeah. It has a green background, you can tell. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'll be pretty seamless, and the data should populate in real time as we go through the year. So,
what about plant nutrition in the data? Is that something that they measure as well?
Yeah, so I believe they're not testing tissue for fertility, so not directly plant nutrition, but they are asking, I think, for soil amendments, what you put down for fertilizer. Is it? I don't know if you can go pull that page back up. I don't remember if it was just fertilizer, or if they also want an actual soil test result. I believe it's just what as applied would probably be the.
Yeah, I saw the soil test, and then it asked what nutrient inputs, and that was part of it.
They got soil type, and then they got your NPK rate on the right side there.
Yeah. See, yes. And yeah, I can do this offline, but it seemed like, you know, I selected no on this, but it still asked for the nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium rates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's is fertilizer added to irrigation water. That would be, I think, for just fertigation. you'd still have your rates if you fertigated or not, whether it was soil applied or applied with irrigation water, I think is the distinction there.
Okay.
Yep. Well, any questions in the chat about the database before we move on?
Not so much that, but I think that you could also request additional tests from them, if I remember reading the information right. So if you wanted something more like metals and stuff like that, you could ask for that. The additional cost, I'm sure,
Right.
but they'll be able to do that for people as well.
Yeah, good point. Another thing is that they want participants to submit at least 2 samples at different timings from the same field or same variety. So you would be in it for at least $60 as a participant, two samples at $30 a hit. And that's because we want to see that cannabinoid concentration change over time in these crops.
Yeah, but that's a bargain to get that data, for 30 plus shipping. But
So James, and you're also looking for more than just CBD, right? I mean, we're looking for
Yes.
grain fiber as well.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yes, any hemp grower can participate, whether you have CBD or grain and fiber. I think for certain reasons, the data may not be as important for grain and fiber growers because the chance of going over on THC is lower in most of those cultivars. So the cannabinoid data, maybe not as relevant. And also probably in grain and fiber, you're only going to be taking 1 sample for regulatory purposes. You're not likely to be doing multiple sample timings to time harvest for grain. But, still good information about what folks are doing with hemp for grain and fiber as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a question here, is that when do you recommend starting your sampling? And I think if you read in the information they have there, I think 2 weeks after flowering is what they're looking for, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think it's a minimum of 2 weeks after flowering is when they want you to start. I don't believe they're specifying the timing beyond that, but certainly want the crop to be into flower because that's when you're going to start really seeing the cannabinoids ramp up.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's the deadline for this. Have they extended it a little bit or not?
We actually already had it extended. So this was first, an idea out of University of Illinois, and Phil Alberti put it together, and then started, rolling it out. And then you realized that this collaboration would be valuable, and kind of brought us on a little bit later. But we've been promoting it for 2 weeks in Michigan now, and unfortunately, the webinar day just worked out that we're up against the deadline. So please do apply today or tomorrow if you're interested.
Yeah.
You see that question in the chat there, James? Craig?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, if you're doing foliar applications or in-season applications of fertility, fertigation, like was mentioned, I think they're going to want your full program for the year, because it wouldn't make sense, I guess, to although we might want to check with Phil on that. The cannabinoid data is a moment in time, right? That's sort of a snapshot of that moment in time. Maybe it doesn't matter so much what you do after that. We'll have to pass that one on. Let's see, that's from Aaron. Aaron, I don't know if you're on the list for iHemp, or if you want to put your email address in there, and I could pose that question to Phil and get some additional information for you. What is the address for the data display? Oh, yeah, sure. I'll pull that up.
Yeah, I just pasted.
You just put it in there, James.
Oh, thank you.
Yep. Yeah, and I pasted a link to the video that kind of explains the program as well.
Mm-hmm. They've got a pretty detailed sampling video on the Rock River Lab site too that lays out the sampling protocol. So it's pretty.
And
instructions are pretty clear.
Here is where you enter.
All right, Aaron, I got your email address. I'll follow up with you on that one.
So this is maybe a new venture for Rock River the last few years, but just to give a little background on them, they've been doing agriculture consulting and testing for over 40 years for the agriculture. So this is a established company here.
Yeah. Yep. Right. The Pride Analytics, their hemp offshoot or cannabis offshoot, I think is a newer venture. But yeah, the lab itself has been around for quite some time. And they actually they did a lot of hemp testing in Wisconsin last year, and I think the year before as well.
Didn't Wisconsin have a lot of trouble last year with going hot?
2 years ago they did for sure. I don't know about last year.
Yeah, I'm not sure about last year either. Well, maybe we should move on. We can talk about some of our other research. So I mentioned we got started in 2019 with grain and fiber research, and we conducted a variety trial last year at a couple locations on campus and here in Chatham, Michigan for grain and fiber. And it was quite successful. You know, we learned a lot along the way, and we ended up having quite strong yields here for grain. We averaged up over 1,000 pounds per acre of grain for the varieties that we planted last year. So it was encouraging to see that, you know, we can produce grain and fiber hemp even at high latitudes in Michigan, and that there are cultivars out there that are appropriate for our environment. And this year we expanded out. So last year's work was funded by Project Green, which was an internal grant program for the plant industries in Michigan through MSU. And we leveraged that project and were able to secure some funding through a NIFA tribal research grant. The tribal research grants focus on increasing research capacity at tribal institutions. And so we've partnered up with Bay Mills Community College in Brimley here in the UP, and also Little Traverse Bay Band of Odawa Indians in Carp Lake near Harbor Springs. Both of those tribes maintain tribal farms. That's a Waishki Bay Farm in Brimley and Ziba Mijuang Farm in Carp Lake. And we're working with them to collaborate on research evaluating both CBD and grain and fiber, and specifically looking at some of the challenges facing tribal communities as they're trying to investigate hemp as an opportunity for economic development and food security and food sovereignty as well in their communities. So that project this year consists of variety trials for CBD and grain and fiber. As part of that project, we have 14 grain and fiber varieties and 16 CBD varieties that we're growing at 3 locations here on our farm in Chatham, and then at the 2 tribal farms. And then we've also got an additional collaboration for CBD here at Uprec at our North Farm, where we have an additional 20 varieties for a CBD trial with UW Wisconsin. So we've got a total of 36 CBD varieties here in Chatham. So maybe we could flip through some pictures, Dave, if you don't mind. They kind of help tell the story. And I apologize, they're not in order. We put this together kind of last minute, but so we probably. Well,
Are these, James? Are these this year's crop we're looking at?
Yeah, everything is this year. Yep. So we'll probably kind of go backwards in time, but this is our grain and fiber variety trial at Escanaba at MSU's Forestry Biomass Innovation Center. And we have grain and fiber there in Escanaba and CBD in Chatham. And why did we do that? Well, I'm sure many of you have heard conversations, maybe saw my presentation at the iHemp Expo about pollination. We had grain and fiber in Chatham last year, and we had neighbors quite concerned about their cannabis crops and the impact of our pollen. So we decided to move down to FBIC, a little bit more isolated area, more windbreaks and so forth for grain and fiber to keep that isolated from not only our CBD trial this year, but also from our neighbors growing cannabis. Interestingly enough, it really seems that we're having a natural offset between flower timing and grain and fiber and CBD in Michigan. So our grain and fiber plots are wrapping up flowering for the most part now. There's still some monoecious varieties that are still actively flowering, but we're seeing a decline in senescence of males, as you can see in the photo here as well. This is just from a couple days ago. So this stuff is wrapping up flowering now. Our CBD hasn't started flowering except for our auto flowering varieties. And so maybe we'll be able to just naturally avoid a lot of the pollination conflict. We'll see. It's a little bit hard to see in this photo because of the angle and the height of the plants, but there are, again, 14 varieties of grain and fiber and 4 plots of each of those varieties in this trial. And as we go backward in time, you'll be able to see them better defined. If you look at kind of the center left, there's some short plants. Yep, there, and just to the right of that. Those are some of the what I consider dedicated grain varieties. They're dioecious, early maturing, mostly grain varieties because they're short. And then some of the real tall stuff that you see is monoecious or late maturing dioecious varieties that are dual purpose, or in some cases maybe even better suited for fiber than grain. Well, let's flip through a few more photos and we can kind of see where this journey takes us. Yeah, so this is a close-up from the same timing inside that plot. This is actually X59. I can tell by looking at the photo and where and how those flowers are set on the plant. X59 has a real habit of producing one big cola at the top of the plant. So this is X59, a grain variety. This is actually the only, I'm pretty sure, the only domestic bred variety that we have in the trial at this point. Most of the material we have is coming out of Canada. Oh, I shouldn't say it. Nope, I'm wrong. There's 2 other domestic ones in there as well from another company. That's X59. You can see full male flower action in that particular photo. X59 is kind of middle of the road in terms of maturity of the varieties that we have this year.
Flip to the next one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Here we can see your designations.
Yeah. So this is the same site in Escanaba pretty early in the season. This was shortly after we weeded. So, pests are challenging in hemp because we don't have a lot of control options. Luckily, insect pest pressure is pretty minor for the time being. Weeds are a challenge. This field, because it's research, we actually were able to try out Sure 2. Sure 2 is a grass herbicide that can be effective in hemp and is used in other places like Canada. It's not labeled for use in Michigan, but in research we can try new things like this. So this was treated with a Sure 2. We didn't have grass weeds as a result, but what we did have was tons of wild buckwheat. And if you know anything about wild buckwheat, it's a vining type weed. It climbs up. And what we found both years, last year and this year, is if you have a poor stand of hemp, weeds are a problem. If you have a good stand of hemp, weeds really aren't a problem, particularly if you can get one cultivation in. So these are planted on 14-inch rows with a drill. And our option in these small plots is hand hoeing. So we went through this just once, and hoed between rows, not much in row, really just between rows. And that was enough, really, to control the buckwheat. Where there's thin spots, the buckwheat has climbed up the plants. Funny enough, maybe because of their height, it seemed to prefer climbing up the males versus the females. They tend to be a little bit taller early in the season than the females. So where plants have gone down because of buckwheat climbing up them, it's been mostly males, and so I'm not too worried about it. And it's only part of the plot that has real heavy weed pressure where we had a little bit poorer establishment. It's kind of to the left of this photo. We're to the right, we had real good stands and fewer weeds, or the weeds were not going to be able to compete with the crop as well. Let's check out next photo. So this is our CBD trial at the North Farm, and you can see the plants closer to us are larger, and then further away they're smaller. And this is the difference between our 2 sets of CBD. We've got our earlier planted NIFA CBD trial in the foreground, and then the smaller plants in the background. And we're using a horticultural model for our CBD trial this year, although I personally believe that the horticultural model is short-lived. We're already seeing farmers and suppliers of seed and clones innovate and come up with more of a mechanized field crop model for cannabinoid production, or a multi-product system where I'm harvesting maybe grain and CBD from the floral biomass. So, you know, why is that? What are the problems with this system? I think it's cost, and that cost is number one, feminized seed, and number two, labor. So I don't really see, again, this horticultural model persisting long-term, but that's where a lot of the industry was last year and continues to be in some cases in Michigan and the Midwest. So we decided to grow these varieties from feminized seed on plastic with irrigation and so forth.
And it's probably too early to know if what your ratio was as far as any males out of those or hermaphrodites.
Right, we're just beginning to be able to sex these photoperiod sensitive varieties. In the auto-flowering varieties, we've got 6 auto-flowering varieties in here that are flowering really hard right now. They're budded out, and I just submitted our first samples. They were all female so far, so we're doing well as far as the auto-flowers, and hopefully we'll have as good a luck with the photoperiod sensitive varieties.
Excellent.
These are some leaf hoppers. So I started noticing, and I don't think I uploaded a picture of the whole plant, but started noticing some yellowing leaf tips on outer leaves, outer fan leaves, and lower leaves on some of our CBD plants. And, you know, we had recently mowed or cutting hay nearby. And if you know anything about leaf hoppers, they tend to move from other plants when they're disturbed or when their plants are taken away with harvest and into other crops. So we have some leaf hoppers showing up in our CBD, and they are starting to do some damage. And it's funny because I started with one plant that I saw, and then I went out there yesterday, and there's 4 or 5 plants in that area in kind of a cluster or patch. And it's starting to expand. So we're probably going to end up having to treat for these leaf hoppers in the next few days here.
What can you treat
Looks like some spider mites too, huh?
I haven't seen spider mites yet.
Is that just from where they've been chewing?
You know, I can't really tell from this photo, but there could be something there, yeah.
I'm just noticing the red bodies. It's usually when I see spider mites, it's usually the color they are.
We thought we had some mites earlier this season, but it ended up not being mites. So there are a limited set of insecticides that are labeled for hemp by EPA. The trouble is for commercial growers, you also have to look at what is labeled in your state, not just at the federal level. And a number of those are more biological products that are currently labeled as insecticides, a lot of neem-based products. And then there are, I think, 2 conventional insecticides that are also labeled at the federal level for hemp. So I haven't decided which one we're going to use yet. I did a little bit of looking, but haven't made a determination yet as to what would be best. And I've got a text out to our colleague at Purdue, Marguerite Bolt, the hemp specialist there, is an entomologist as well, and I like to get her input on stuff like this. So.
Yeah. What's this critter?
I don't have them ID'd, but I have noticed a number of different types of larvae that make cocoons, or kind of like the bag worms, I call them, which is not a technical term, but like I don't know if they're gypsy moths or what, but yeah, we've seen quite a bit of that in hemp. It seems to be fairly minor, kind of a secondary issue. Sometimes they like the top of the plant, and they pull up the top leaves on the that apical bud, and that definitely could be a problem. I think if you got that top bud compromised. But in other cases, I've seen pretty good feeding. Like when those worms have the roadside shrubs all in the ditch all bagged up, and then one of our hemp plots was just beyond that, and we had one plant there that I think I've got a picture of later on that had that same kind of damage. This is inside our grain and fiber trial, again at Escanaba, looking at one of the earlier maturing dioecious varieties. So you can see the males are nearly senesced in that particular variety. I think we're maybe 3 weeks out from harvest at that location. On our earliest stuff, we'll probably have 2 or 3 harvest dates, kind of groups of varieties that mature at a similar time.
So do you think we could get to the point where we could grow grain and fiber, harvest it, and then grow for the cannabinoids?
Perhaps with an auto flowering strain. Um, Although that late in the season, I guess even with a photoperiod sensitive strain, if I was setting out transplants today, for example, of a photoperiod sensitive strain, it would flower very early in its growth, and you'd end up with a small plant with flowers on it, similar to what we see early in the season with the auto flowering varieties. So I think it would be tight to pull it off.
Well, but what about not on the same field, but if you had adjacent fields and you went ahead and started, because it's not until the CBD is in the flowering stage you have to worry about the pollination. Is that correct?
Yeah, right.
So if
So
you
yeah,
get that,
adjacent fields I think would definitely be feasible with the right variety. I mean, I would want a photoperiod sensitive CBD variety that flowers late after we get down, below 14 hours of daylight, late daylight. And then I would want a real early grain and fiber variety that's going to be done releasing pollen by the time my CBD plants are ready to go.
and how do we know how to do that? Through the data, right?
Through the data. Yeah, you can look at our variety trial reports.
Beautiful. All right, so come
and
on,
make
boys.
that decision.
Play.
Yes.
We need data.
Exactly.
We can all be smarter next year, right, Blaine?
Oh, absolutely. James, are you going to do anything with that grain this year?
Probably not our grain because we're working in small plots. All we're wanting to do is really gather more information on it. So we won't market it, but what we will do is look at protein and oil content. I'm working with a analytical company right now to get the calibrations for our NIR that we have here in our barley lab to be able to run samples of hemp grain for protein and oil. And that's the goal, so that we can tell people not only the yield of grain, but the quality of that grain as well. And beyond that, we probably will just, I don't know if we'll try to feed it or eat it or what, but we won't be selling grain because we just won't have that much volume.
Well, just keep in mind, I may be interested in it. So.
Oh, well, if you want small amounts.
Hey. Even small amounts are fine, and we'll talk about that later during the show. Why I might be interested in that. I do know, just give you a little bit of facts, that some fiber has already been cut already in Michigan this year, and I'm not growing myself, but I'm helping other people that bought the grain that I sold, and they will probably harvesting that very soon. That harvest was done at 54 days for the fiber.
Yeah.
So real.
Was it starting to flower at that point?
Yeah, it already had flowered. And just
yeah. I think I've heard for dedicated fiber that kind of the beginning of flowering is the ideal timing. That conversation about harvest timing I think is so important because it really depends on what you're trying to do, right? The dedicated fiber harvest timing is different than a combined grain and fiber system, and it's different than a CBD timing. So knowing what you're trying to produce and how to maximize the yield and quality of those different products with adjusting something like harvest timing is really important.
What we're really going to need going forward as well from the fiber manufacturers is, what's their, what do they need? What's their specifics, right? For the type of tensile strength and length and all that kind of stuff. So that's going to be real important as we move forward to be able to supply the market with what product they need to have in the end.
Yeah. And that's a really important point too. Just because you have a hemp stock doesn't mean you have high quality fiber. We saw people saving CBD stalks that look like Christmas trees. That's useless. And maybe you can chip it up and use it for animal bedding. That's about as good as it's going to get. But the fiber quality, fiber length, tensile strength, which can be determined by how you manage the crop, not only variety, but stand density has a big influence on stem diameter, which has a huge influence on the things that we just talked about, fiber length and tensile strength. And the balance of hurd, the woody core, versus the bast fibers on the outside.
Most of this, right now, most of the stuff it isn't even thumb size. It's more pinky size almost in the diameter of the stalk right now.
Yeah, pencil size is what I've heard is the guideline for fiber. Would be ideal, be pencil diameter.
Hmm. So the ratio of the bass fiber is higher to the herd at that point, right?
Okay, I'll be right back.
Yes, I believe so. So as you increase stem diameter, you get more core and not more bast. Yeah, I mean, break open one of those big CBD stems, right? It's all woody core. Here you go. Exactly.
Here.
Yeah. So
I saved some, just for show and tell.
yeah, that's great. Yep. Let's
Cool.
see what the next photo's got in store for us. Oh yeah. So this morning I had the pleasure of visiting uh, Lance and Denise Lampier. They are the first grain hemp growers that I know of here in the UP. And they have a really neat story. They own a food service company, and they are looking into processing the hemp grain and using it in their food service company as a non-GM, plant-based, high-protein food for the people that they serve with their company. So they've got two varieties, CFX2 and Grandi from HGI in their field. And I was just out there this morning. They have done an amazing job. They're not they're farmers now, but they haven't been farmers before. So Denise grew up in Northland, where they're located, about an hour from me. And the family farm has been there, but not real active in recent years. So they decided to go back and resurrect the family farm and grow hemp. And for folks that haven't farmed recently, they are doing a great job. They got the crop in early. They've taken care of fertility, weeds. It just looks so good. And they were real early planted, I think about the 16th of May. So their crop is just starting to mature seed. I found, one or two hard seeds out there today. And I'm super excited to see how they do going forward with leveraging the value, really trying to add value, capture the value of that grain in some food products.
How many acres are they growing?
Got about 5 acres total, so it's small to start. So it's half one variety and half the other. I'm standing, I think, in the CFX2, and it's the Grandi behind them, I believe. I better double check the heights. The crop behind me was taller.
That is going to be loaded with seeds, isn't it? That is.
There is so much grain out there. If they don't hit 1,500 pounds an acre, I'd be surprised.
Wow.
Yeah, you can see that. My mouse is sticking, trying to get to that cola. Yeah, that's
and that's the short variety. That's the short variety behind them. The stuff behind me in the photo is even taller. So
cool.
So the CFX2 is taller than the Grandi?
don't quote me on that. I got to look at a report from last year.
I'll talk to Lance. Yeah.
Yep. So right now they're working on combine setup. I've got them connected with Jeff in Manitoba to try to learn something about combine setup and post harvest. So
what we used last year, just so you know, it was not a good test last year, but we used a straw walker combine, John Deere straw walker combine.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't have any problems, but the fields were quite weedy and they weren't very tall. They were nothing like this. So I don't know what issues, but that's what we used last year, was a straw walker combine.
Mm-hmm. Did you do any shielding of shafts or anything like that? Any modification?
Didn't have one bit of problem. But again, the plants we have were only about 3 feet tall at the most. And they were mixed in with weeds and nothing like this. Nothing like this. So so it could be a totally different story here, but
they I think they really hit their stand density right on the head, because when I first went out there earlier this year and the males were in there, I thought, ooh, this is thick. Like, are they going to get good flower and seed set? But now the males have senesced, I think it's almost perfect. And the thing about it is, because of their density, there's very little to no branching, and almost all of the grain is set up at the top and one big cola. So it's going to be a real dream to harvest, I think.
Just go through and cut the tops, basically.
Yep. Yeah, you should be able to set your height and go. There's very little, sort of variation in height, and not much flowers set below the canopy. So Yeah, I think it'll work out well.
So they're probably 2 weeks. Maybe?
Yeah, I said 2 to 3 weeks. They live down in Indiana. They're like traveling up here to manage the crop, and so
Holy cow! Wow.
yeah, they said they're coming back in 3 or 4 weeks, and I said I want to come back a little earlier if you can.
Yeah.
I'll have to give Lance a call today.
Yeah, give him a call. Yeah.
Very cool.
I'm not going to brag, but that was HGI. You like you said, that was HGI seed. So,
Well, and the fact of the matter is the HGI varieties did best in our variety trial last year. So, not being biased because Blaine's on the call here, but those genetics performed better than the rest of, we had 9 varieties last year. So the HGI genetics outperformed the other players, among 9 varieties last year. So that's just the data. Again, that's not me plugging HGI. But, I think there's somewhat of a reason for that. And if you look to the Canadian industry, they've been growing grain hemp since 1994, 1995, right? So they're way ahead of us in this.
They've been following the data for a while. Yep.
Exactly, yeah. So, the breeding effort behind these genetics coming out of Canada is much more significant than some of the newer stuff that's coming domestically. Not that the new stuff won't be good, but that's kind of where we're at right now. So it's been nice to see. Oh, here we go. So this is also Lance and Denise's field this morning, and they were standing to the left, and I was standing to the right. So you can see the additional height on that other variety there.
Yeah. Another 8 inches or so.
So much different. This is interesting. Really interesting. I have some pictures of the crop, and I'll be down to the 9-acre field that a gentleman put in this weekend. I'll get you some pictures of it.
Nice.
It's 5 feet tall already too.
Sweet.
Not colas like this though, I don't think. So.
Oh, I know. They've done such a nice job.
And with a 18-hour commute, or how long does it take them to get from Indiana up there?
I didn't ask them, but I know it's not a short drive.
Wow.
Yeah. You can skip over that one. That's just another look at the Escanaba grain and fiber. Okay, this is a little bit later CBD at the North Farm here in Chatham. The other picture that we saw was earlier in the season. It was looking at the NIFA-funded material. This is our UW collaboration, and what's cool about this picture is right in the foreground you can see one of our auto-flowering varieties. So it's all budded out and flowering, and at the bottom of the bottom, it's the ones to the right in the corner there. Yeah, there. Yep, there's one.
Oh, this guy right here?
Well, actually, both of those varieties are autoflower. Yeah, so that one and the one just above it are autoflowering. So why would I want to use an autoflowering variety? Well, they're really short cycle. Short days to maturity. They're also very small. So the yield is going to be much, much less than our other varieties. I think, though, something to consider would be actually relay cropping or multiple crops within a year. So I think if we're constantly seeding in the greenhouse, we could probably finish 4, maybe 5 rounds of these autoflowering varieties, even in Chatham, Michigan, and the Upper Peninsula. I mean, they recommend 2 weeks in the greenhouse, no more, because they will start flowering in the greenhouse.
From seeds or clone? Can you clone?
From seed. So you're putting out a transplant that has like a couple of true leaves. They're very small. So 2 weeks in the greenhouse from seed.
Then let them run
in the field, and they will be flowering within a week of being in the field. It's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're now 3 weeks into flowering on our auto-flowering varieties. I just took the first sample. Some of the main colas look like I could have harvested them already. Some of the side branches are still coming, but very, very short cycle.
This whole row is autoflower?
No, it's just that one plot. The first 2 plots in the foreground, and then you can see there's a stake there, and the next plot up is a photoperiod sensitive variety that's quite large looking. So these are randomized. That whole bed on the far right is autoflowers. They're all small and flowered there.
Cool.
Yeah. We've got a cover crop. We broadcast white clover between our plastic
Okay.
beds.
Gotcha.
There's also buckwheat, our old pre-plant cover crop, coming back in there, and some weeds. We weed whack it to keep it down, but the white clover helps control weeds, hold the soil, deal with mud, all of that between our plastic beds.
It doesn't steal any nutrients from the plants?
Not when they're on a dedicated bed with plastic and fertigation running right to the plant. There's no competition there
Not
to
an
be
issue.
worried about.
Okay.
Yeah. Plus, white clover is low growing and it shouldn't be very competitive to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
This is just an example of the menagerie of insects that we see in our fields, particularly in grain and fiber fields. I think because of the pollen and nectar in the flowers. We have defoliators, chewing insects like this grasshopper. We have a lot of lepidopteran larvae, a lot of caterpillars of all different kinds that chew on our plants. But most of the defoliators are pretty minor. I haven't seen a hemp plant defoliated to the point that I'm concerned about it yet.
Oops. What did I just do?
Could that be the end? Might be.
Sure. No. Oh, no.
We got some bud pictures here.
Do you want me to jump to one of these?
Yeah, right where your cursor is there, right next to the grasshopper.
Oh, next to the grasshopper. Oh, right here.
Right there, yep. So this is an example of one of our auto-flowering plants early in its flowering cycle, and you can see how small it is. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah,
But,
wow.
yep.
Huh.
I think the autoflower, well, I've been told different things. The autoflowering trait, I guess, came out of ruderalis, out of naturalized, wild hemp, ditchweed. I think also, I would assume that some of the autoflowering traits have been bred in for indoor production environments where you want plants to stay small.
Lots of turns, yep.
Yep.
Oh,
Other way, yeah. Just another example of buds on the autoflowering plant this year, CBD.
So with that being so small and being such a low yielding plant, what would be the reason that we would want to continue with something like that?
Well, one justification here in the Upper Peninsula, and I think a lot of Michigan, because we are humid, is the risk of botrytis in the fall. So botrytis is a fungus. They call it bud rot in some cases. And botrytis can infect buds as the season declines, and it can ruin your crop. So other cannabis growers in the Upper Peninsula for years have fought with botrytis. One way of dealing with botrytis is to force your plants with light deprivation and get them to flower earlier and get them to finish before the season shifts, the weather shifts. And similarly, the auto-flowering varieties would allow us to finish the crop earlier. Because it is so short cycle and the yield would be so low, I do think that you would have to have a different system. You'd have to have high planting density, and you would have to have multiple crops per year in an outdoor system to really make it pay.
So Dave, that was Becky just came in here and gave me a little thing. There's some questions on Facebook about posting the links and that kind of stuff that we have here.
Oh, okay.
So we might need to post that to the
can
iHemp
copy
website or something. I don't know how to do that to Facebook, but
I've got it.
You got it? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You're the man. You are the man.
Oh, let me go back here. I got a sticky mouse. So. Oh, how come we already saw this one? Are we going the other way now?
Nope. Just similar looking.
All right.
Oh, so I mentioned our collaboration with the tribes. So this is Weischke Bay Farm. Weischke Bay Farm is near Brimley, Michigan. It's owned by Bay Mills Community College and the Bay Mills Indian community. And they have a location for our CBD trial. And so these are the same CBD varieties that we have at the North Farm. The differences that you notice, plant size, for example. So we distribute out the seeds to our different partners, North Farm, Weischke Bay, Z Farm, and we had them produce their own transplants. And so everybody has a little bit different system and timing and so forth. We tried to be as consistent as possible, but we wanted to we gather. So these are the same CBD varieties that we have at the North Farm. The difference is that, you know, I'm getting some feedback.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I went to the Facebook page. I apologize.
Oh, no problem.
I just muted it.
So yeah, same varieties, and we're collecting the same information here. I thought I saw a question in the chat. What CBD varieties have shown the strongest growth characteristics so far? So I guess I really can't say, because, you know, thus far we've just really been watching them grow vegetatively. Our data collection really starts in earnest with tracking flowering date, and then information about things like pistil color, and to gauge maturity, and then ultimately sampling that flower for cannabinoids and contaminants, and looking at the yield of flower and cannabinoids. So, you know, we have some kind of anecdotal information about maybe what varieties look better, but it's certainly not conclusive at this point, and I wouldn't dare, I guess, give a recommendation based on what we've seen so far. There's a lot of diversity out there. One characteristics that we can talk about right now is phenotypic consistency or variability. So we're seeing a lot of players come into the space of producing hemp seed and hemp starts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are more experienced and getting better results than others. And, you know, plant breeding is not a simple enterprise. I can't just go harvest the seed from these trials I'm showing you and sell them as seed next year. You have to understand things like isolation. You have to understand a little bit about genetics. And so it's really interesting when you walk our CBD plots. You've got some plots where every plant looks the same, and I can look at it and I can tell you that's this variety. Other plots are all over the board, and you've got many different phenotypes or physical characteristics within that same variety because of how that breeding was done. Mm-hmm. So in the extreme, there's some plots where I have plants that are, you know, 5 feet tall, and I've got plants that are 2 feet tall. Yeah. Or leaf shape even, thin leaves versus wide leaves. And obviously that is not what you want as a grower. So that phenotypic consistency is something that we'll report on in our reports, and that will be kind of the first thing that you want to see in your crop, in addition to things like cannabinoid yielding and quality.
James, the seed from the CBD and the seed from the grain, okay, is there a CBD THC trait in the seed from the CBD varieties? So what I'm looking for is, you know, the grain doesn't have any THC and CBD in it, hardly at all, right?
Very small levels, yes.
Right, but so I'm wondering, does the seed from the CBD carry the CBD and THC traits more than the grain seed? That's what I'm looking. That's what I'm asking.
When you say traits, you mean actually, does the seed itself contain cannabinoids?
Yes. Correct.
Yes. So up till very recently, science had not been able to detect cannabinoids in cannabis seed or grain. And that's because the concentration is very, very, very small, but it is there. So I would guess, based on that both in the grain and fiber varieties and the CBD varieties, you're going to have some very minute concentration of cannabinoids, but probably slightly more in the CBD varieties because we're selecting for cannabinoid yield and production in those varieties versus the grain and fiber. In the grain and fiber, it may even be so little that it's yet undetectable by the instruments that we have available. But it is, I was very interested to read in the literature fairly recently that they actually have detected very, very, you know, parts per billion levels of cannabinoids in the seed itself. Because a lot of people are concerned, like Lance and Denise were talking about this morning, their customers that are not familiar are concerned about, you know, is consuming hemp grain going to make me fail a drug test, for example? And it's not enough to do that. but there is a very, very tiny amount in the grain.
I'll send you, I had the grain tested for CBD and THC. I'll send you those test results. You'll have them for your information.
Yeah, what did it come back at?
Really, really low, like nothing.
Did they detect it though?
No, I'll send them to you. I gotta look at them and see. But I'll
What,
send
did you
them to you.
go private lab or MDARD?
Yeah, private lab up in Traverse City.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
part of it's going to depend, of course, on the equipment that they're using and the detection level of that equipment, but then also the reporting level. So they're going to have a cutoff in their reporting. They'll only, report to,
So many digits.
tenths of a percent or hundredths of a percent or whatever like that. And so if it's very, very small, it may be reported as a 0 or a non-detect. But yeah, it's not going to be, in the tenths or hundredths of a percent even.
Well, gentlemen, it's almost 1 o'clock. We're going to stretch the iHemp hour a little bit because I think Blaine has some news to share.
I have a bunch of
Really
news.
appreciate your time, Jim.
James, thank you very much for everything.
And I'll keep an eye out for any more questions anyone might have. Please put them in the chat. We'll make sure to take advantage of this opportunity.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, James. We really appreciate all that you're doing to help us move forward and understand this plant and what it can do for us a lot. So a lot of this is kind of the where's this coming from weird news kind of first thing I'm going to start out with. And maybe you already heard about this, but there's unsolicited seeds from China that people are receiving in the mail. And right now there's no rhyme or reason that they have of why these people are getting these seeds. So the U.S. Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, APHIS, is aware that people across the country are receiving unsolicited packages of seeds from China in recent days. APHIS is working closely with the Department of Homeland Security, Customs and Border Protection, and State Departments of Agriculture to prevent the unlawful entry of prohibited seeds and protect U.S. agriculture from invasive pests and noxious weeds. Anyone who receives an unsolicited package of seeds from China should immediately contact their state plant regulatory officials or APHIS state plant and health director. Please hold onto the seeds and packaging, including the mailing label, until someone from your State Department of Agriculture or APHIS contacts you with further instructions. Do not plant these unknown seeds. Okay? We don't know what's going on there. We don't know why. There's a bunch of speculation of what's going on, but whatever it is, if you're getting seeds in the mail, I think we're all intelligent enough here to know we should not be planting those seeds. So don't do that.
But we'll call them the Trojan horse seeds.
Yeah, yeah. So here's another one that's kind of strange that's going on. I do a lot of stuff with food safety and helping everybody out, but so I get these newsletters and emails every day. There's a salmonella outbreak that's quickly sweeping across the country. The salmonella outbreak of unknown origin is spreading rapidly, increasing to 23 states, and that was a few days ago. There are now 212 patients, which is up by 87 cases from July the 24th, since the CDC outbreak announced it on Tuesday. Specific food, grocery stores, or restaurant chains have not been identified as the source of this outbreak. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention stressed in its outbreak update, this investigation is active and evolving. Health officials are pleading with the public to help with the outbreak investigation. If you have any disease or symptoms of that, you want to report those. And Michigan has, as of July 24th, has somewhere between 11 and 15 cases in our state. So again, food contaminated with salmonella bacteria does not usually look or smell or taste spoiled. Sick people should see a doctor because special tests are necessary to diagnose salmonella. Symptoms of salmonella infection can include diarrhea, abdominal cramps, and fever within 12 to 72 hours after eating contaminated food. So that's another one of those weird ones. Why and how come, I don't know, but we'll figure that one out. There's two grants opportunities for hemp growers that are coming down to a deadline. One of them is for socially disadvantaged groups grant. It's published on June 25th, and the application deadline is July the 10th. The grant has a maximum award of $175,000 and is eligible only to participants who are co-ops, groups of co-ops, or co-op development centers. And that one, and the other one is Rural Cooperative Development Grant Program. It was published on July the 2nd, and the application deadline is August the 3rd. The grant has a maximum award of $200,000 and has a 25% fund matching requirement. Funds can be used for such items as technical assistance, data collection, feasibility studies, or training. So 2 of them that are available. Summit Labs has issued a voluntary nationwide recall of Cora organic watermelon CBD oil due to high lead results. On the last show, we talked about testing, and when we had that, about the certification process. So they've done some testing. This is mostly out of the company is out of Tampa, Florida, is where Summit Labs is out of. But just to let you know that people are testing these, and this is something that we have to be aware of as we move forward with the industry to make sure we're putting out a good product and a safe product for everybody.
Hey,
Little bit of sad news. What's that?
Joel sent a picture of the seeds that are being shipped from China. I thought it was kind of interesting.
Sweet.
Thank you, Joel.
Okay.
So that doesn't look like hemp seeds to me.
No. Yeah, no, that's interesting. I haven't seen that picture, but I've seen some of all different kinds of seeds. Some are white, large, some are black, some are different. So yeah, thanks, Joel, for sending that along.
Yeah, I've seen all different kinds also.
Yeah, I don't know what the theory is behind it, but
someone said, I read somewhere that it has to do with getting reviews. So they send someone a package of something light and easy to ship, low cost shipping, and then basically generate like a fake review for a different item. I don't fully understand it, but somehow getting, a bunch of 5-star reviews for products that don't exist or products that weren't actually purchased.
Oh.
And a lot, well, and I'm going along with that theory. Some of these packages, when they come, they say jewelry or rings or something like that. They don't mark what really is in that packet. That's probably to get it through customs, I assume. But
yeah, but why send them to random addresses if you actually wanted someone to receive the seed?
Where are they coming up with the database, right? I mean, it's weird. There's just a lot of weird people out there doing weird things. That's for sure.
Yes.
Let's see what else we got. And the last thing I got, I guess, let me go. The sad news. For those of you that are Raspberry Zinger fans, Hostess Raspberry Zingers, there's been a recall for those due to potential mold. So if you got any at home that you're storing, you might want to throw those out and go buy some new ones.
That's sad. That is really sad.
Let's see here what we got.
I heard something about some hemp seed oil.
Yeah, we got that, but let me finish up this next one, then we'll get to the hemp seed oil. FDA submitted their cannabinoid enforcement policy draft to the White House. I'm not going to go into too much detail on this. We'll post this up on the website. This is get a close-up of that. You can see where to find that in the Federal Register. Basically, the bottom line is nobody, even though the heading is here and what's in here, they really don't know what's in this yet. What's been submitted, and the best guess from Jonathan Miller, he's a U.S. Hemp Roundtable and one of the attorneys there that helps. They've been doing a lot of work on this. We had him on the show a few weeks ago. The best guesses are going to give some guidance that will take immediate effect, and then discuss the plans for regulatory process, which would probably take a few years. But we're grasping at straws here because even some of the most powerful friends on the Hill haven't seen this. We're just holding our breath, is what he says on that. So we have a sponsor.
I'm sorry. Before you do that, we've got more intel.
Okay, more intel.
Thanks to Brad Werfel. Thank you, Brad. So he found this about police warned of brushing scam that sends unsolicited items to local residents by mail. So it talks about that, and yeah, they're boosting rankings. So I don't understand all that. And maybe these are the white. They look like pumpkin seeds.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
So yeah, just look that up. I'll post a link to this in the chat, so if anybody wants to venture down that rabbit hole, they can.
Okay.
All right,
Simple.
and I'll stop sharing. Thank you.
So
On
again,
to our sponsor.
yeah. So we do have a sponsor, one of our very first sponsors for the iHemp Hour, and it happens to be down on the farm. So I finally, and James was talking about earlier, I finally have been able to take the grain that I grew last year, bring my label there,
Oh, yeah,
and been able to make hemp seed oil. So that's why I'm interested in your seed, maybe too, maybe possibly. But if you're not going to sell it, that's fine. But anybody else that has some, I may be interested in buying this year. I'm also going to be carrying hemp flour to be able to bake with. And as soon as I can find a machine, and I'm looking for one, so is a dehulling machine so that I can make hemp hearts. So if anybody knows where there might be a dehulling machine back in somebody's closet somewhere in the barn or whatever that they're not using, I'm looking for that. I'm having a very difficult time trying to source that equipment here in the United States. I can get it from overseas. I don't want to do that. I may have to do that to start with, but if anybody knows of any, it'd really be helpful if you can let me know. So this is available, will be available on the website, and there will be fine establishments throughout Michigan and others that will be carrying this as well, and we've already got some out in the stores already. So that's the plug for the down on the farm and the hemp seed oil. So
and I have to tell you, I used some of that great hemp seed oil to make French fries in my air fryer. They were delicious, and I grilled some other things on the griddle. It was very good.
It's really good.
Blaine, what are the best uses for that oil? Is it equivalent to olive oil or vegetable oil?
Any kind of olive oil, flaxseed oil, sunflower seed oil, any of that kind of stuff. It's just the nutrients of this oil is so outfaring any other oil as far as the benefit of it.
Do you know what the smoke temp is?
329.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I'm excited about getting into the oil. Lance said this morning that he bought a dehuller. I don't know if he sourced it domestically or not, but you might ask him.
Well, then I better give him a call then, because
yeah, it probably is not from the States, but you know.
Well, I can, they're like $1,200 from China, but slow boat from China, right? I'm not going to get it for 4 months, and then when that little special bearing goes out, where am I going to find it? So that's why I really want to try.
The steel will just be junk to begin with.
Yeah. Remember to sample your test, get your samples into the state for testing before you harvest. Even though we're growing this grain and fiber, that still has to be tested. So make sure you're getting your samples in there 15 days prior to when you want to harvest it, pretty much, if you can. And also, we're still looking for livestock farmers that want to be part of the livestock feed research project. We're going to be using the grain. We're going to be using the cake from making this oil. It's in a pellet form. It's exact same as what goes into the flour, but it'll be in a more manageable form for farmers to be able to use the pellets. Also, we're going to be using some of the fiber, the plant stalks this year, making some straw out of that, put that into the feed as well. So we're looking for farmers that may want to participate in that and help us out.
Oh, can you tell me more about that, Blaine? I hadn't heard about that. So who's all involved so far, and when are you starting?
MSU is quite involved with this whole process, and we have a nutrient guy down here in the Allegan area. His name is Travers, and he is going to be helping kind of collate all that information as well, and find the people to do that process on it. So, we're going to have a control group, 3 or 4 animals that we feed this to versus animals that we don't, and then being able to record various information. And I'm not sure if they've come up with that yet. MSU is going to work with the Hemp Feed Coalition so that we record the results in a manner that we can submit to USDA for approval to use this in feed.
Wow. Who had MSUs on that one?
It's a good question, and I'd have to look it up. I don't remember.
Yeah, let me know. Because we do beef cattle research here at our facility. We have 350 head of red Angus cattle.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I'm looking for our next project right now.
No, there you go. Also, I'll text you. I'll get the information to you who it is. I just got to look it up for sure.
Yeah, let me know.
So yeah, so it's been an interesting week, obviously with everything going on, and where we're all moving ahead forward to this. James, have you heard of any decortication machines in the state yet? Anybody come up with one or have one yet? Okay. All right.
Not that I'm aware of, yeah. I know there's a couple of groups. There's one group that was organized this spring by a guy named Rusty Peterson that's working on fiber. And then I got a call from another individual that's kind of doing the same thing, kind of trying to put together a little cooperative or working group that's specifically interested in fiber. He's actually an architect. So he's interested in the building uses of it. So, but I don't think either of them have source processing equipment. They're just kind of still.
And my understanding too is that there's the decortication machine really won't work on the CBD plants as much. So, I know somebody that's working on a prototype for that to be able to actually decorticate the CBD plants as well. So hopefully that'll move a little forward this fall, and maybe we'll get some there. But the understanding is there is 2 different machines, so and how they have to handle the product to do that. All right. See, Dave, you put some stuff up there. No other questions. So I guess it's that time of the hour, unless anybody else got any comments they'd like to make. No? All right.
That's good.
So
I would just say, send your friends to the Hemp Database Project. If they're not on today, send them a link or get them on Facebook on the iHemp page. I put the information in the comments on the live stream today. I'd love to see that Michigan number up above Illinois and Wisconsin even. That would be amazing.
We'll try and add about 20 into the database today. We'll do some
sign up myself, actually. I got to do that today.
Well, I'd like to do it for the grain and the fiber. They want 2 tests, but if we're going to harvest here real quick, I'm going to put the information up there and get it in, but I don't know if I can get 2 tests out of that. I can get 1 because we're going to have to send it into the state anyways, for approval. But so we'll see. I'm going to put the information in there for that. So, and this is where we need to get Lance on the show, because I know he's got that chef and everything, and we will get him on here. But here we go. Get it on there right. There we go.
Oh yeah, the recipe.
The recipe,
really running over
today. Absolutely. How we wrap up every show. So
yes.
Now this one's really again a pretty simple recipe. I have not had a chance to make this yet, but my granddaughter's here for the weekend, and she likes to be a little chef. So we're gonna try these. This is a blueberry banana hemp muffin. Ingredients are pretty simple. You got 2 medium overripe bananas, which I've been working on this week. 1/4 cup of pure maple syrup. We know where we get some great maple syrup with some CBD
infused, yeah.
2 eggs, 2 tablespoons coconut oil, 1 tablespoon vanilla extract, 1/2 tablespoon of cinnamon, 1 cup of almond meal, 1 cup spelt flour, 1/4 cup of rolled oats, 1/4 cup of ground flaxseed, 1/4 cup of hemp seeds, 1/2 tablespoon of salt, 3/4 tablespoon of baking soda, 1 cup of blueberries. And you make them, you preheat them, and mix it all together. And we'll have this up on the site. But I'll have some my grandkids will be the testers on these, so I'll let you know how their results come back from them, if they like it or not. So, all right.
You post those on Facebook too, Blaine?
What's that?
Not on Facebook. We have a page on our website. You'll see it linked up on the iHemp Hour page. Not a big fan of Facebook. I'd like them to end their prohibition, and if it were up to me, we just shut down our Facebook page. I'm not happy with them at all. So
it's another topic.
So censorship seems to be the norm anymore. But so we have all our hemp recipes on our website in our control, and that's where they live.
And the only recipe that's original on there is the one for the hamburgers with the hemp seed in it. The rest of them I do find on the internet, and I try to give credit where credit is due for these.
Yeah,
that's great.
We'll have a couple more. I've been doing smoothies with some fan leaves as I do some trimming, which I want to share.
Yeah.
So that's from Rusty too. Rusty told me that trick. It was pretty cool. It's not my
getting consumers familiar with how to use hemp products is so important. I just had that conversation this morning that until they understand what it is and how to use it, we're not going to have the demand. So that's great.
And that's one thing I got to do with this hemp seed oil too, right? I've got to get some information on my website so that people know, what to do with it and how good it is and all that kind of good stuff. We're also going to try to make some lotions with it as well, with the hemp oil in it. So yeah, we're going to be doing some fun stuff with that. The next week's show, I believe, if everything falls together right, we're going to have women in hemp. And then hopefully the week after that, we're going to talk a little bit about testing. We may switch those shows around, but we're going to talk to New Age Labs about their SAP analysis, and then some other labs regarding getting testing in, and maybe we'll go over the rules from Michigan about how you're supposed to take it and how you're supposed to send it in, so everybody's aware of that, because again, that's going to be happening real soon here. And hopefully on the August 20th show, we're going to have some manufacturers on there. One is going to be for the hemp wood flooring that they're making down in Kentucky, and we'll have some other that are making other things with the hemp products as well. So, all right.
Good ideas. All right. Thanks, everyone. Great show. Thanks again, James. Really appreciate it.
James.